In this video, we're going to be reviewing the coding panel. The coding panel has been meaningfully redone in the April 2019 release, and we're going to be using that new coding panel to show you how to build a coding panel, assign it, and what it looks like to the user. We're going to create a coding panel. We're going to explore permissions associated with a coding panel, and we're going to show how it's used, what it looks like for a user. So let's hop into the tool. All right, the coding panel is right here, called coding panel. Should be pretty straightforward and easy to find. Let's open it up. It will always look blank when you first open it up. The coding panel really needs to be opened when a case is opened. So let's go ahead and open a case. We'll open the demo case. And then to the extent that we have issues, labels, custom columns, they should all pop up as the case loads. And in this case, indeed, they did. The three things you can put in a coding panel are, as you see here, the four things: issues, labels, custom columns, and then finally database columns. Down here is, if you will, the coding panel you're building, or the grid that represents what's in your coding panel. And here is where you will see what the coding panel ultimately looks like. It is this panel and only this panel that will be seen by the end user. So let's go ahead and make a really simple one. First, the way you add issues, labels, custom columns, all these things to the coding panel is you simply come and you double click on it, and you see it pops up there. And a folder will pop up with all of its sub items in it. And if you don't want those sub items, you can come down here and remove them by double clicking directly on them. You can remove the whole thing. It's pretty simple. Basically, you just double click on stuff and it will show you, and it will show up here. So let's add an issue, which we just did. Let's go ahead and add a label folder. And you see that's got its sub-label as well. And then we'll go ahead and add a custom column. This is a radio button, I believe. It says radio test, so keep our fingers crossed it's a radio button. And then let's add a database column. Don't add the object ID. You can, in fact, add it. It's not a good idea. It won't let you code against it. We should really remove it from here. But just know that's the only one where I'm going to make that statement. Don't add that one, but we'll go ahead and add object name. And then we want to save this panel, and we're going to call this video demo. And then it allows us to assign that directly to users. Now, the only users that will show up in here are the users that have access to this case. Remember, we logged into the case before we created the panel. Coding panels are specific to cases. You can use them in multi-case mode, but then you have to be really careful about making sure everybody has access, making sure the labels and everything is done correctly. But it will in fact work, but nonetheless, it's much simpler to understand it in single case mode. That's how we're going to do it here. So we're just going to go ahead and assign this to, we'll assign it to a couple of people. It really doesn't matter. But just for the sake of it. And we're going to go ahead and save this. And it'll tell us it's saving the panel. A panel saved successfully. And that means it should be here now. You can see this case has a lot of panels because it's the case we use for testing. Video demo right there. And we can go ahead and click on that. And it will show us what that panel now looks like for a user. Let me go ahead. I'm going to make this the whole screen. And show you what a user will see. They'll see an environment like this, if you will, where they've got all the different things they can code against here. This is the radio button custom column we had, the labels we added, the issues we added, and then ultimately the object name, which it was just a text value because you can enter anything into it. And they'll be able to save and go to the next document, apply whatever previously they had, and so on and so forth. Now, that's how you construct it. That's how you save it. That's how you assign it. But let's talk about a couple of gotchas. There are two primary gotchas. The first is labels and issues. They need to be properly permissioned. So if I logged into the case as one of the users we assigned it to, and I don't have access to the label folder and the sub-label with issue 3 or the sub-issue, if I'm not permissioned to use those will not show up in my coding panel. Even though I was assigned this coding panel, I will not have access to those. So if we want to make sure that the users have access, we have to go ahead and permission these properly. Now, there's other videos that talk about how to permission labels and issues, so I'm not going to discuss that here, but I will quickly show you how to do it. The easiest way to do it is to go into facets. There's a way to do it in the admin panel, but just go quickly to whatever it is. We'll target the label folder. Here, right click on it, go to that, go to permissions, and then give it to whoever it is you want to give it to. I've forgotten who we even gave this coding panel to, so sort of irrelevant who we give it to. But once you've given it to those users, go ahead and click save. If you want to include child tags, do that. And then now they will have access to that. But again, there's a whole video on that, so I'm not going to. The other gotcha is the roles. When you assign a role to somebody, there are, let me just pull up this role. There are some actions that, well, specifically, there is one action that is relevant. And let's see, there should be one that says coding panel here. Where is that? Create coding panels. I was right at the beginning. If they have this right, if the user has the right to create coding panels, then he will see the whole full coding panel widget we just showed them, which is not what you want for most users. So you don't check this. You have to make sure they don't have that right checked. And obviously they're not admin, and then they will see the coding panel how we intended it. So I'm going to go ahead and log out and log back in as a user that has access to our coding panel, and we'll see what it looks like. But I'm going to pause the video here and just not make you suffer through the log out, log in process. Okay, we just logged in as the AData user. This was one of the users we gave access to the coding panel. Now let's open up the coding panel, and you can see they can't create coding panels, so they see a much simpler view than the administrator saw. Now let's go log into the case that we created the coding panel in. And we should see this change up here, and you can see it did. And here's the panel. And this is the panel we made. It should look very familiar with one notable exception. Remember, we gave AData access to the labels that we had created, the label folder and the sub-label folder, but we did not spend the time to give them access to the issue codes that we included as part of the panel, so they don't have access to it, which is exactly what you would hope for, what you would expect. So let's see how this all works in action. Okay, you've got all the data in the case here. Again, if they're a restricted user, you may have just what they have access to, any number of different things. But let's go ahead and just do this simply with the labels. You can see this has no label associated with it. Let's go ahead and just click on this one and just add the label, sub-label, and go ahead and save it. And we're going to say, don't ask again. This is the family coding options, and we can go ahead and do that. And this indicates, of course, as we're familiar with our labeling, that the grid is now out of sync with the database. You can see the sub-label has been applied there. It's refreshing. Now they're back in sync, and there's the sub-label. So it's really, really simple, straightforward thing. If we go to the next one and we want to apply previous, we can just go ahead and do that, and it will do the same thing it just did. apply the sub label, and then once it's done refreshing, the sub label will be there, and that's how it basically all works. So pretty straightforward, hopefully clear and easy to use, and at least much more visually appealing than it used to be. Anyway, that's really all I had to show you. It's really straightforward, and hopefully you enjoyed the video and learned a lot and are able to use the coding panel successfully. Thank you very much.